faster. A better pipe, in fact, was another patent he did, which is virtually the same. It's not quite the same vortex-creating device, but the pipe was wooden because it was very important that water should breathe. In a steel pipe or an aluminium pipe or a plastic pipe, water cannot breathe, and being a living substance needs to be able to breathe all the time and interact with the environment, otherwise it dies. And most of the water reticulation systems we have today, what is being delivered is dead water, and it's always disinfected with chlorine in order that, theoretically no harm is done to the people who drink it. But the thing is that blood is also about 90% water, and so when you drink chlorinated water, then you are also chlorinating the blood, and you are also disinfecting the blood, which is why people are becoming more disease prone, because they're drinking so much chlorinated water. They also absorb it through the skin in showers and so on. So this was a way, in fact, of transporting water, and it used to be the way. In New York they had wooden water mains, and in many cities they had wooden water mains. But according to Viktor's investigations, once they started using cast iron or cast iron with tar linings and things like that, then the incidence of cancer went up hugely as a result of it. He was able to track it. Everywhere they put a new suburb with a new water main, and the cancer followed it all the way along, because you are actually putting the body in a very debilitated state by drinking this chlorinated water. And what happened in this wooden pipe was the formation of this longitudinal vortex. And this is actually the double movement. Firstly, the central one was, of course, the coldest. But as it flowed along this path, it created these sort of toroidal things. They're only shown as toroidal rotations in the opposite direction, a bit like ball bearings, but the effect of these is to reduce the friction on the pipe. It also, the process, I'll show you the next drawing, which makes it a bit clearer. So this time you're looking down the pipe, and it's actually a very complicated movement to try to describe, because the flukes, the guide veins, which start the water to curl over, make it curl around the outside like this, but they induce a movement in this direction of the central core water. Now the central core water is where it's coldest, which moves fastest. This other water acts in a sort of ball-bearing function around the outside. What happens is that due to centrifugal force, the oxygen is propelled towards the outside because it is a heavier element, and also all the bacteria which are residing in the water when the water first is introduced into the pipe. So some of the bacteria require a certain amount of oxygen to function. Other ones, if there's too much oxygen, they just burn out, pathogenic ones. And so the effect of this is to remove the pathogenic bacteria, build up the life-enhancing bacteria, and build up the energies, the immaterial energies in the pipe itself. So by the time you have got to the point of delivery, the water has already been vastly improved by passing through the pipe in this condition. It would also transport ore and various other things straight down the middle without touching the sides. But this same longitudinal vortex is important in streams and in rivers, because it is through their alternation that firstly the bends in the rivers are created. It's also through the vortices, the longitudinal vortices especially, that the rocks are ground up, the sediment is ground up and delivered to the environment. The coldest water filaments always being near the center. And Viktor described what he called his energy cannon, which was the way in which the alternating of vortices created the energies and how they were finally delivered to the environment. Now, there's sort of anti-clockwise energies and clockwise energies, positive, negative, always the interaction between the two. So on a left-hand bend, then the movement is anti-clockwise, and the right-hand bend, the longitudinal vortex, where it's clockwise. But there's a point where they switch from one to the other, where anti-clockwise becomes clockwise, clockwise becomes anti-clockwise. And that is where the energies which have been accumulated by the vortical motion, where the minerals and trace elements accumulated and suspended in the water because the grinding action takes place here at the bends, are then dropped at the ford, where the ford is, where it flattens out, because that's where the movement of one vortical movement transforms to the other one. And this is what Viktor called his energy cannon. This is where not only were the physical substances, the nutrients deposited, but also the immaterial energies which had been gathered and created during the vortical movement, and they were discharged into the environment at that point. Now, if you had two bends going in the same direction, he said it was very important that a river will always do this alternation, that you shouldn't put two left-hand bends where there should be a right-hand bend, and so on. And that is not understood in river engineering because that disturbs this whole process. How a bend actually forms is again due to the differences in water temperature and density. That if, for instance, up here we have water which is flowing through a forest and it's all shaded, then a profile evolves which is more or less symmetrical because the coldest water is in the center and there's no other heating influences. But once you come to a point here, for instance, where the forest on this side has been taken away, and so this soil here is hotter, then you get an asymmetrical profile because the densest water is now on the far side and the hotter water is this side, and because the water is denser, it flows past the warmer water, the colder water flows past the warmer water and curls around it, and so gradually that, in the process, that is how the bends in rivers evolve. Eventually you get sort of double profile here, which is somewhere around the ford where the energies change over from one to the other. But in many rivers these energies have been completely depleted and they have to be reformed, because coming back to the previous mention of energies and how the energy is primary and the form secondary, if you want to recreate an energetic river you have to tackle the energies within the river and not the bank. But you can do it by the bank, but very carefully. Most bank confining structures are just straight concrete walls to stop the water from going out here or there, but that doesn't do anything to restructure the actual energy of the water so that it can flow naturally. Now, these were inventions of his which generate vortices down the middle. Some of them will cause the water to rotate this way. It flows from the bed up this guide vein, I suppose, and flips over, and then it starts a vortex this way, or on the other bend it would then cause the water to rotate in the opposite direction. So it would artificially regenerate the vortices or the energy path within the water itself. There are other ways to do it also, that you can put what he called energy bodies in the river. That would mean tethering some sort of egg shape. It may not specifically be this egg shape, may be a longer one. But in the water which has become moribund and dead, you put the egg in it and then it starts a vertical motion behind the egg. So you could, in a straight stretch of river or somewhere where you would want to remove sediment and where, that's, and you wanted to cool the water, then you could put such a device in. And a further factor, of course, which affects rivers, but it's a very subtle one and not really as realized as much that it does have an effect, is the actual rotation of the earth and the direction of flow of the river. Because let's say, for instance, we have a river which is flowing from west to east, so that means the river is flowing towards the sun. That means that a little packet of water in that river is also moving towards the sun, and the sun is coming the other way. So as this movement occurs, that packet of water does not heat up nearly as much as it would as if the river was flowing from east to west, where the packet of water would be flowing underneath the sun all the time and getting hot. Do you understand what I mean? So generally speaking, therefore, west-east flowing rivers tend to be more fertile on both banks because the water is maintained at a very marginally cooler temperature and therefore is able to transport nutrients. At the bends it's able to grind up nutrients, and so right from west to east it will be fertile on both banks. When the river flows from east to west, however, because each water packet gets heated up more quickly, then the ability for the river to carry sediment diminishes and the sediment is dropped, that means not only is the sediment dropped, but the nutriment is dropped, and so that at the end of the river, the banks tend to be barren because there's no more substance.